Welcome to the Ever North podcast, where we bring on the explorers, dreamers, and discoverers to find out what their true north is in life. Hope you're all having a great day and enjoy the show. Today on the show, we have a certified life coach and business mentor, Meg Cerney. Welcome to the Ever North podcast.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Glad you could come on. So you started your working career as a CPA in the public accounting world and made the transition to coach women entrepreneurs, unleashing yourself from the previous life you were living. When did you realize that you needed to make a career change, and how difficult was it for you to make that change, given that you went to college, you took the very challenging CPA exam?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was a really long, hard process, and there wasn't a specific moment in time. It was just a compiling factor of realizing I was in the wrong story, and that, I think so many people feel who go to school and they work really hard to get a certain education and find at the end of the day that it's not, checking the boxes off, thinking this is going to get them to some destination of feeling successful and fulfilled. And then that moment, and maybe not even moment, but many of moments of realizing, oh no, this is not it. Yeah. So that for me was a 3-year process of figuring out. And it was hard because I had my whole identity wrapped in kind of the ego side of things, of being on that path and in pursuit of that path, and thought that was, I really believed at the time that was the only way to be successful, really.
Yeah. And during your accounting career, you also developed an interest for coaching other women entrepreneurs. How did that develop?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it was really, I was so lost that I started working with other coaches when I was a CPA, and that was illuminating to me of an industry I'd never heard of before. I'm like, what's a coach? And I even kind of hate the word life coach.
Yeah. What would you rather prefer?
I don't know. I've been trying to figure that out.
Yeah. What do you think of the term mentor?
I like mentor. I think sometimes that implies I did this, now I'm going to teach you that, where the thing about coaching and really great coaches is being able to support and help someone up level, even if they haven't done that. And like a basketball coach who can teach someone like Michael Jordan how to be the best, even though he's not Michael Jordan, or she's not Michael Jordan. Sorry, I kind of derailed on that, but yeah, so I started working with other coaches and then figured out this was a whole industry. And at the time, I was deciding between going back to get my master's in psychology, because I also have education in psychology. So you could see how confused I was even in college on what path I was going to take. But so figured out, I don't have to go back to school, and I can do something that's way more future focused and helping them create something versus maybe heal something from the past.
Yeah. How did you build experience to be able to coach women entrepreneurs?
Yeah. Well, I am certified, so I did go through a training, but before that, I needed to know if this is what I really wanted to do, because I had just gone through that whole rigmarole with my CPA, so I wanted to be really discerning. And so I started coaching people for free and was just really honest, please, can you give me feedback and honest criticism on how that session went or what takeaways came for you? And so I did that for a lot of months, and I learned a lot, and then I went to training.
Okay. So currently you help female founders reclaim their authentic voice and unleash an aligned brand online. You have a quote on your website that's finding our voice is one of the greatest gifts. Learning how to use it to expand our influence, impact, and income is even more profound. What would be your number one tip to a founder that has lost that authentic voice and aligned brand online?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it always starts with that person. So it's not, like the whole is in all of the parts. And so if a founder is struggling to show up online, they're probably struggling to show up in other places of their life. And so that's where coaching is really powerful, to be able to help them dissect the patterns and where it's showing up, and focusing on small little bite-sized tasks. Like if it's having a hard time expressing yourself online, maybe start by clearly communicating to someone in person and building that momentum. And from that space, I think you can come into more authenticity with yourself, and that gives you a lot more space to start to even think about some of those like strategic business things, such as finding your brand voice, your tone, everything. You have to start with the person first.
And then what's been like the biggest area of struggle that you've identified when working with different entrepreneurs? And what's kind of like the advice you would then provide them for that struggle?
So I see it being like twofold, I guess. Oftentimes I work with people who are from different backgrounds than where they want to go. So whether that's they've been in a corporate setting, or they have like a really conservative upbringing and they want to do something that's really creative and artsy and out there, that it tends to be like this reconciling thing of being in a space, whether it's corporate America or feeling like maybe your friend group doesn't understand you, and being able to start to shift that. So that's the personal side of the voice. With like creating an aligned brand voice, that's kind of like the second phase that comes in, where it's a lot more strategy and focused on who they want to serve. So, typically I work with women who were in corporate, they want to leave or they have left, and they need to like get really crystal clear on their messaging and who they're serving, and building a voice that's going to resonate with those people.
When you kind of started out coaching, was it something that you knew you wanted to coach like women entrepreneurs and not male, or was there like a preference did you have, or how did you kind of like develop that?
Yeah. No, I coached both for a while. So my first year of coaching, I was working with both men and women. And I was actually coaching people in person too. So it was a little bit of a different business model. But I remember one time I was on a coaching session with a male client, and we were like hiking in the trail and whatever, and I got on the phone with my dad after, and I was like, oh, I was just, on a coaching session, we were hiking, and he was like, is this a guy? I'm like, yeah, and just didn't see anything wrong with that. And he's my dad, so he's, obviously gonna put some fear in place.
What's his name? Where does he live?
Yeah, or like, careful, that person could be a serial killer. They're not. And that wasn't the motive behind switching, but that did start to illuminate some concerns I had maybe with working with men. And then I was just a lot more passionate about working with women entrepreneurs, because so many women struggle with exactly what I'm talking about here, which is like the personal side of finding your voice, which is the people-pleasing side, which is feeling like you are afraid to like speak your truth or be different or do something different. And then there's the brand side of like actually doing that and putting yourself out there, and like not in a watered down, diluted way, but in a way that's like super effective and speaking to your people and with aligned marketing strategies and all of that. So, yeah. Does that help?
Yeah, that definitely helps for sure. And then you're also a clinical I say this wrong. Hypnotherapist.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
a NLP practitioner.
Yes. Yes.
What are both of those? Like, what do they both mean?
Yes. Okay, so a hypnotherapist is someone who can work with the subconscious mind. So it's basically deep meditation. That's the fastest way to explain it. It's not the type of hypnosis you see where like someone comes on stage and
it's like puts me out.
Right. Like performs things they don't want to be doing or don't remember.
Yeah.
So it's a healing modality, and it helps people really in the coaching space. It helps you accelerate shifting your beliefs. So when we're in that space where we're working on unlocking that person's personal voice and their personal power to move forward with their creative endeavor, that's where like hypnosis can be really, really powerful, because instead of taking, 2-3 years in coaching or therapy or whatever, things can happen much faster when we access the subconscious mind.
How are you able to do that on like a coaching level? Because I can observe like what they do at schools, but I've seen like Tony Robbins events, and I know he's kind of one that'll do that as well. Mm-hmm. But what are some kind of examples for
He's
that?
actually trained in that too. So everything that I have is also part of what he's been trained in, which is kind of interesting. But some examples of what that would look like is it's going to be separate than like a coaching session. So it's something I offer to one-on-one clients, but it's going to be like a lot of times I'll be doing it in person right now, but bringing people into a space where they feel really comfortable. And then there's like a 10-15 minute induction period where a lot of times they like kind of feel like they're sleeping, and they go down to their subconscious through specific languaging and cues that are directing the subconscious mind, which is like a whole like other podcast episode. I feel like
it's very interesting.
Yeah. So. And it's really cool because people can uncover like memories, and they can have really profound emotional experiences. Or like what can happen a lot of times is that thought pattern they were having before is just like gone. So anything that was like, oh, I shouldn't say that, or oh, I can't do that, or it's just not there. And so it's shifting that thought process and that subconscious programming a lot faster. Yeah.
So what's typically the topics that you use that for?
It's all about like the personal voice part. So like anything with self-worth, people like needing to stand in their power, anything with like finding your voice. So someone who feels like they can't speak up or like say what they want. It's been like a lot of different ones, but also done stuff with like money beliefs. I've done stuff with like career beliefs, things that are just really ingrained in our psyche.
Yeah. No, I really like the money belief because I think majority of America does like have a money problem and like a bad money mindset. How do you, like, what would an example of like a one-on-one or like workshop be to like put that belief in a better place?
Working with hypnosis or?
When working with hypnosis.
Yeah, I think, well, first it would be getting clarity on what that belief is, so that they're currently holding. So what would be like a belief you have or someone you know?
Yeah. So let's say my belief is that my income is fixed and I can't make any more than like what I'm making at the moment.
Yeah.
Would that be a common one?
Yeah.
Or it's just I don't believe in like the potential of like my income.
Yep. So like speaking to someone who's maybe in like a 9-to-5 or like something that's
exactly.
100%. And so that is really less about the fact that they're like in this 9-to-5, and it's more about them not seeing like opportunities or being closed off to potential. So we will go back to like the first memory that they had when they maybe felt like they were closed off to opportunity or possibility, or had to like hold on to something really secure. And then shifting it into believing that they're so money wants to come into your experience. It wants to support you, and it's not good, it's not bad, it's neutral. It's like here to support you, right? So we'll do a lot of like affirming what that new belief system should be.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're kind of, so you bring it up, so you readdress the past, you touch on the past, you just converse about it, and then you've kind of tried to lay a new foundation for the future for them.
Exactly. And so with hypnosis specifically as like a healing modality, it's actually really good to have super actionable, like tangible things that they're going to be integrating. So after that therapy, it's then giving them like, do this, like having Monday date nights with your money or things like that, where
Monday date nights with your money? What does that mean?
like being able to
sitting across the table from your money, like all the bank money.
like, okay, so looking at the money coming in, feeling grateful for it, or if you're sending out bills or paying off that, whatever it is, like knowing that that's coming back tenfold and building that faith muscle of, okay, I don't know how, but like I'm open to possibilities. And it doesn't have to be stuck at this salary from this job. So every week I'm going to sit down, I'm going to pour like a nice glass of red wine, and I'm going to look at my finances and just like feel good about them. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, sweet. This question arose when we were talking about that. But so let's say someone else were to do hypnosis on you. What would you want them to cure?
Oh, whoa, we're
so
going
kind of like
deep.
turning it on you.
Okay, well, I can tell you because hypnosis for me has been the most powerful modality I've used, and I've worked with a lot of coaches and people in terms of building my business and also just like personal development. So what I have worked on before was actually money. That was like the first time I saw someone, and it was shifting the belief, like you can't make money doing what you love. That was super ingrained in me. And then I think today, if I were to work with someone, oh man, there's like a lot of things, but I would say,
we're not all perfect, so everyone's gonna have things. I'm gonna have things that I'd love to work on as well. But
yeah, I think public speaking, because I am such an introvert that I sort of have this story that I don't have like the energy or the bandwidth to hold like large spaces and stuff. And maybe that's part of not wanting to be seen in like a big way. So working on that. And I'm sure there's a deeper thing there.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with the public speaking for sure. Like for me when I was younger, I just didn't enjoy like speaking in like classes and like reading out loud. And just through going to networking events, being more open, it just kind of like helped develop a like speaking skill.
Yeah.
And being able to like listen to people, but also speak in front of people, just like help building that like over time.
Wow, that's awesome. It's such a skill. And I feel like when you can master it too, it's like how cool. You get to share your voice and your message further. So that's something that is apparent to me that is,
I mean, people would rather, they'd rather die than public speak.
Yeah, they're more afraid of public speaking than dying.
Yes, that's crazy.
It's so crazy. And then spiders, right? They're like number 3.
Maybe, yeah. I'm sorry, I don't know the exact list, but I know public speaking is like number 1.
Yeah, it's up there for me for sure.
So you have an Instagram post, and I really liked it because you talked about kind of what we were just talking about, and it was along the lines of physical voice, and it's kind of like the first kind of like the first sign to tell whether you are in alignment or not. And it's like when you're shaking, like when your voice is shaking, it's like anxiety. Would you want to kind of like expand on that?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Because I was reading and I'm like, oh, this is actually pretty accurate, just like people.
Yeah. So I think a lot of times we don't realize how the physical manifestation is so telling us like the bigger thing that's happening. And definitely for myself with my physical voice, it changes a lot based on like how I'm feeling and what I'm experiencing and when I'm out of alignment or in alignment. And so when my voice is like shaky, yeah, I'm anxious, or feeling maybe like rushed to say something, or like, yeah, a little bit anxious. And then when I have a deeper voice, I'm like actually breathing into my body and I'm present. And that is like a challenge when you're working and you're so in your head and you're like, go, 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 flying. I think my voice was actually physically like a lot deeper when I was in yoga teacher training, which is interesting because we were doing so much like in your body type of work. And then it's high when I'm in my head. You know, I can like hear just as I speak the differences between them. Do you resonate with that for yourself? Or?
Yeah, definitely. I would say, because I listed it on my phone. So definitely I would say I'm more, so when these arise, I would say shaking maybe, but not so much, but more so inconsistent. Because it's, you said it's perceiving other people's emotions around me.
Oh, yes, yes.
So I have an interesting thing on that, because so perceiving other people's emotions around me, it's something that it's obviously negative because it's inconsistent with your communication. But through kind of like being able to get a perception of other people, you're trying to kind of like access their viewpoints as well, almost.
Yeah.
So it can become like something of benefit, but also of negative, because I've found that like in certain situations, I like to tap into like how other people are viewing the situation.
How do you do
Just
that?
do that. So for instance, so when I was traveling, for instance, there was this one girl, we were staying on the beach, and there was this one older lady sitting behind us, and she had this little kind of like toy booth set up. And you could tell she was like a local, and she had like this silly spray. And I was standing in a long line of another person from like a different country, and this older lady just like sprayed this silly spray on one of the person that was standing on the beach.
Oh.
And she just got very angry at this older lady that was like a local. She was
Right.
just thinking it was funny.
Right.
But this person I was standing next to was just extremely angry at this like local.
Right.
But this local is just trying to be funny,
Play.
just like play, enjoy life. And this other person the person I was standing next to, they weren't able to understand like the situation at hand. And she was just trying to have fun. Like we were standing like right next to her. It's like that's kind of.
I totally agree. I think it's nuanced though. So there's a difference between emotional intelligence and like being able to perceive what's happening around you and people's intentions or like the way they feel about the situation, and being able to empathize too, of like, oh, this woman was trying to just play, like what's the big deal, you know? So being able to talk yourself through that, I do think that is different than the feeling of what happens, what's something I've worked on, because what I teach and what I coach women on is what I've struggled with for many years myself. And so like the inconsistent voice, because I'm perceiving other people around me, is more, it's not just like, okay, I'm able to tap in and...
Was I wrong in that saying? Was it not off?
Wait, what do you mean by that?
Like the example I gave,
Yeah.
was that accurate to the inconsistent, you would think? Or would you say it's not very?
I think that is kind of different. That's
Okay.
and this is my own personal experience, and that's why I say it's like so nuanced. So I'd be interested to see what other people think. But yeah, I do think there's a difference between like emotional intelligence, which is what your story is really alluding, and empathy, and feeling like super highly sensitive and maybe not having almost like the nervous system to like move through what you're like feeling bombarded with by other people. Because if you're so open and so empathic, like there's a lot of energetic work you have to do to like protect your energy. Does that make sense?
So when you're talking about like the energy, what are you kind of alluding to with that being the inconsistent with the message? Would it also pertain to like you're trying to like, oh, like what are these people going to think about me?
Exactly.
So you then like become very inconsistent and like
Totally. I think that's part of it. I think it's also maybe picking up on something or just feeling like a lot of different energies. So if you're in like a larger room or it's not emotional intelligence, it's kind of like overwhelm of things happening around you and or feeling like you're seeking approval from someone. That's what those play out as.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think that's really, unfortunately, like something that a lot of us deal with. I think as you get older, it gets easier. But I know almost every woman I work with has and does feel like that. Like you have to play to the room and have to, there's just a lot of things within that.
Yeah, what would you say the most common one of those are? Like the shaking, grounded, higher pitched, inconsistent, and deeper.
With me personally?
Personally, and then also that you've observed.
I think what I've observed is the inconsistent voice the most with the people I work with, specifically like the women I coach and support. For myself, I think it's cyclical. So right now, the shaky voice is like really big, and I don't know what that's about, but I think maybe also too much coffee or I don't know. Yeah.
Or just
like a lot of change because, I recently joined Active and I went from being in my business full time to working with like another team. And so maybe part of that is just like the anxiousness of transition, but I have noticed the shakiness in my voice a lot more than I've noticed before. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, because so you recently joined Active. You're kind of looking for like a team to work with. Where did the interest to work for a team arrive from?
Yeah, that came up when, I know you were just there, when I was living in Bali. I felt pretty isolated, to be honest. I mean, there's a great community there and there's a lot of great things, but I started to feel like I need more than this, really. And I did have someone on my team who was supporting my business, but it didn't feel like the teams I was used to being a part of, even in the corporate sense. Like, I loved the teams I was on, even though I hated what I was doing, like, yeah. And I think you just learn so much from other people and you grow and you like challenge each other. And I just knew I needed to be a part of that again. Mm-hmm. I knew that. Yeah,
if you're an independent entrepreneur and you don't work at a co-working space, like I could just imagine that would be very difficult just given you're not like communicating with people that much. You're not able to like connect. You're not provided as many like opportunities to network.
Especially as online business people too.
Yes, for sure.
It's extra.
Yeah. But there's definitely people that are like, I'm good, I don't want to talk to anyone, too.
Right. Well, I met a lot of those people in Bali, which is so funny because they were people I'd followed online, and they were amazing people, but their life was not really one I would want. Even though I was like, oh, this looks so cool. When I got to know them, I'm like, wait, I would want more people in my like day-to-day to work with. But,
yeah, for sure. One thing you mentioned is a good girl conditioning. What is good girl conditioning?
Well, you're about to get woke.
No, I was just very curious because you had that on your Instagram. I was like, I've never heard that term before, so I was just curious about it.
So actually, the first time I heard it, it's something that's like pretty commonly used now, I think, but the first time I heard it was with Regina Tomhauser. She's an author. And she has written some really interesting books about women empowerment, and really sensuality is kind of her angle of it. But my take on it is good girl conditioning is everything we've really kind of said, like this feeling girls are raised to be good and like behave a certain way and like fall into certain societal standards, and boys are too, but there's a different game happening there. And I think what happens in adulthood is after we've been so rewarded for being nice and being kind and being like so good, we get to our careers and we get to our lives, and it's like, wait, I don't want to be nice about that. I want to like stand up for myself, or I want to say no to that thing actually because that's against my values. And it's having to like shift that whole paradigm of what once was really a rewarding, like a reward system to be good. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so just never like disobeying the law, like always following the rules, not trying to break anything that's already been set, that type of thing.
And it's beyond like not breaking the law. It's like not breaking the unwritten law, the societal stuff that is ingrained in our communities, our workplaces, our day-to-day lives, our relationships. I hear it all the time where at work, women apologize so much more than men. It's like, sorry, taking up space.
Especially in Minnesota, it's probably like through the roof for everyone.
And it's something I catch myself doing all the time, and I'm like, oh, I have such deep good girl conditioning roots. And it's not all bad. Like, obviously being a good person isn't bad, but when it's impeding on you advocating for yourself, having clear boundaries, having a voice, that's when it's time to like shift it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because if there's something that's unethical against your values and you're given the opportunity to kind of either accept it or not accept it, you should definitely go with your gut on that. And if, let's say, like the leader is wanting you to do something and they kind of like enforce it on you, it's your right to not obligate like with that action.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Totally. And like, let's be the leaders. Let's stop making apologies and like just own our greatness and power. And just, I mean, I'm a pretty intense feminist, so I'll get off that soapbox.
Yeah. So you also are an amazing copywriter. Mm-hmm. What does the term copywriting mean to you?
It's easy. It's like writing with, like selling with words. That's how I would describe it. Is